A gunshot cracked through the early morning, echoing so sharp it cut right through the fog of my half-awake brain, and let me tell you, nothing in all my years on this patch of green in Quaydale Springs ever hit me like seeing my prize bull thunder, his legs buckling, eyes wide, looking at me like I'd just let the world fall apart. You know, that kind of moment where reality jerks sideways and you're left standing in the dirt, coffee cooling in your hand, trying to make sense of a world that suddenly doesn't. They called it wild boar control. The HOA did, but that was no boar, that was Thunder, 8 years old. The pride of my herd, my partner, through some of the darkest chapters of my life. And they dropped him in my own field, standing there in broad daylight with nothing but a clipboard and a smirk for an apology. Karen Whitmore, HOA president, always with that board tucked under her arm like a shield, explaining how they were protecting the community, as if those words could erase the blood on the grass. The kicker. She didn't know who she'd tangled with. See, I'm the kind of neighbor who studies the fine print, who writes the rules for a living. And as I knelt beside Thunder's massive body, a storm started brewing in my gut, the kind that doesn't blow over quietly. Now, I'm not some crank looking to pick a fight. Most days you'd find me out back with my boots in the mud, fixing fences, waving to folks driving by. But that morning something changed. I saw Chad, the vice president, swaggering like he was headed into combat, and Mike, the so-called enforcement specialist, just watching it all like it was sport. They claimed they had the right permits signed by County Commissioner Frank Rodriguez, only I recognized that signature, and the language was so vague you could drive a herd through it. When I pushed back, demanded real proof, Karen just smiled and rattled off an ordinance number 1 I'd never heard a peep about. Not one letter, not one meeting notice. Turns out that little piece of legal paper had been cooked up in a midnight session, 3 out of 7 commissioners even bothering to show up, and the whole thing rubber-stamped by a law firm with more ties to the HOA than a spider has legs. I'll be honest, for a moment I felt powerless, like every system I'd trusted had turned against me. But grief has a way of burning off the fog, and soon I was digging first into public records, then into stories from my neighbors. Old Pete Wilson, his voice shaking with age and anger, told me how they'd shot all his guinea fowl and fined him for nuisance abatement. Maria Gonzalez, just trying to keep her head above water, lost her daughter's goat and got hit with threats to sell her land cheap. Tom Chen, too tired to fight anymore, had watched his 2 donkeys gunned down, and his own resolve slowly bled dry by bills and warnings. All of them, one by one, getting offers from the same outfit, Prairie Development Partners. Always lowballing, always followed by another accident if you dared say no. Funny thing is, every thread I pulled led back to the same web, the HOA, the county, and this development company, all tied together. Gerald Whitmore, Karen's husband, listed as the agent for Prairie Development. Commissioner Rodriguez's wife, Sarah, pocketing commissions on the side. And buried deep, the fingerprints of a syndicate that didn't care who got hurt as long as the land kept rolling in. By the time the next compliance notice landed on my porch, my grass too high by a 1/4 inch, a chicken coop I'd built before the HOA even existed, suddenly a modification violation. I knew it wasn't about rules or safety. It was pressure, pure ugly pressure, the kind meant to drive a man to his knees. But I didn't back down. Instead, I started gathering photos, documents, audio recordings, every threatening word and every phony bill. I installed cameras, talked to every neighbor who'd been burned, and mapped the pattern. The more evidence I found, the more dangerous it all felt. And just when I thought it couldn't get uglier, the county sheriff called. They'd gotten a complaint, said I was threatening HOA members. It was all so carefully orchestrated, you could almost admire the nerve if it hadn't been so rotten. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. I wasn't just a rancher with muddy boots. Before all this, I'd spent years in law, right up to advising the state attorney general. It was time to let that cat out of the bag. I called in an old friend, District Attorney Linda Martinez, and told her the whole story. The look on her face when she realized who I was priceless. Suddenly, I had the state AG's office backing me, a judge on my side, and a restraining order slapped so fast on the HOA it made their heads spin. And it didn't stop there. Once Morrison, the HOA's hotshot lawyer, realized who he was up against and that Prairie Development's parent company was under federal investigation for money laundering, he turned tail offering to represent me instead. That's when the real shape of the monster showed itself. The HOA was just the front for a multi-state casino syndicate using harassment and legal loopholes to snatch land cheap, then flip it for millions. The next weeks turned into a chess match, threats, intimidation, midnight visits from Chad and Mike trying to scare me off, their bravado crumbling the moment I reminded them everything was being recorded. And sure enough, the law started catching up. Chad and Mike arrested. Karen, realizing the walls were closing in, doubled down, trying to turn the community against me, spinning wild stories, forging documents, even doctoring photos to paint me as the villain. It all came to a head. At a community meeting packed house, everyone tense, Karen at the front, ready to pull her last trick. She started laying out her evidence, accusing me of being a government spy, showing photos that must have taken weeks to piece together. But the thing about the truth, it has a way of cutting through noise. As she wrapped up, I stood up, pulled out my credentials, and told the room exactly who I was, what I documented, and that the FBI was at that very moment in the room ready to make arrests. You should have seen their faces. Some folks just went white as sheets, others started yelling, but for Karen and her crew it was over. The agents moved in the handcuffs, came out, and the story broke wide open. When the dust settled, the numbers were staggering. Hundreds of properties targeted, millions in fraudulent gains, over 300 arrests in 8 states, and laws rewritten to finally protect folks like us. Thunder, my old bull, became the symbol of it all. His name's on the new legal aid foundation we started out of the barn. My ranch became a sanctuary, not just for my family, but for neighbors fighting their own battles against crooked HOAs and bullying corporations. A year later, standing out in that same field with my wife Linda at my side, her badge shining in the morning sun, Sophia laughing as the new bull grazed nearby, I couldn't help but feel like we'd taken something broken and built it into something nobody could ever take away again. But here's the thing, and I hope you're really hearing me now. Bullies don't stop until someone draws the line. It's easy to feel powerless, but if you dig, document, and find allies, even the biggest machine can be brought down. I got lucky, my background, my friends in the right places, they made the difference. But courage, plain and simple, that's what really changes things. So what would you have done in my boots? Do you believe HOAs should have that kind of power? Ever face this kind of pressure yourself? I want to hear your stories. Drop them below. Who knows, your fight might be the spark that lights up someone else's path. And hey, if you think stories like this matter, stories about real justice, not just drama, stick around, share, let's keep this fire burning. We're turning pain into power, one letter, one story at a time.